Well, hello, COS supporters, and welcome back to another edition of COS Live. My name is Andrew Lush. I will be your host for this program. As you might see, Rita Peters, my partner in crime, she is not with us today. So you're just stuck with me, unfortunately. We have a great show lined up for you. But before we get to the agenda for today's show, please drop us a comment. Let us know where you are tuning in from and what state you are watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And then while you're at it, please send out a retweet, a share, a rumble, wherever you're watching from. Get the message out about Article 5 of the Constitution and Convention of States. This is the secret weapon that the founding fathers gave to you and I to make sure that we keep DC, the elites, and the federal government in check. So we have to use it. As you can see, runaway debt, career politicians, and an out-of-control federal government. We need to use Article 5 right now. So did you know that you can make an impact in elections? Yes, you can. And it doesn't have to be just when it's 2 weeks out from the election. You could be preparing to make an impact all the time, constantly preparing to make an impact in elections. We're going to be talking with Jason Heron, who is the state director of Vermont. He's going to talk and share about how he was able to organize people to check some local issues that were happening with ballots. We're going to talk about that in a few moments. We have a new edition of COS Now, which is going to be coming in just a few moments. But before we get to all of that, we do have our Article 5 trivia giveaway with COS Vice President Mike Ruthenberg. Mike, over to you.
Thank you, Andrew. Boy, it's great to be here. It's great to be back. I just got back from a really fun trip out to the desert here in California where I exercised my Second Amendment rights and shot a little .22 semi-automatic rifle, a 9mm, and a shotgun, shot some skeet. It was super fun. And so that's what I'm going to give away today is I'm going to give away this Second Amendment hat right from the COS store. It says Convention of States on the side. So you can proudly display your affection for the Second Amendment as well. But in the meantime, we're going to give you some trivia that allow you to win this hat. And if you win this hat, you can proudly wear it wherever you want. However, if you don't win the hat, feel free to go to shopconventionofstates.com and you can go buy your own hat. You can see there's a collection behind me. This one's missing off the wall from where I'm hanging my hats, because I like a whole lot of the COS hats. So feel free to browse around and get whatever hat you want. And you can also try your hand at this trivia question. Here we go. Next Monday marks the anniversary of which amendment to the Constitution? I mean, well, that's kind of random, isn't it? There's 27 amendments to the Constitution. Well, let me give you a little hint then. This amendment repealed the 18th Amendment. So there's your hint. Hopefully your fingers are tapping away. We really like it when you are tapping away and interacting with us on this live event, because that means more people are going to be served. More people are going to see this because you're showing and voting essentially with your finger that this is a good way to spend a little bit of time, learn about Article 5, learn about the Constitution, learn about Convention of States. I'll be back at the end to share the answer, and hopefully you're the one who won. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Mike. Before we get to the interview, we do have a new episode of COS Live put together by our own producer, G, who's in the background. It's going to be the latest news for Convention of States. We want to keep you up to date, so go ahead and check it out.
This is Convention of States Now. Convention of States Action CEO Mark Meckler and Rita Peters, Senior Vice President for Legislative Affairs, have officially launched a new podcast called Crossroads, which focuses on the hot-button issues of the day from a faith perspective.
You spent election night at the Daily Wire in Nashville, Tennessee. For listeners who aren't familiar, tell us what the Daily Wire is, and then tell us what that night was like for you and why you were there.
And one of the things I'm proudest of that they're doing is they are the bleeding edge in the culture war around transgender ideology. Matt Walsh is one of their hosts, and I appeared at his rally to end childhood mutilation in Tennessee.
You can check out that show, audio versions of COS Live and The Battle Cry, and much more at conventionofstates.com/pod, or just look for the official Convention of States podcast on your favorite podcasting platforms. Meanwhile, Chris Salcedo of Newsmax used his opening monologue on a recent show to call out U.S. Senator Mitch McConnell for opposing Convention of States in Kentucky.
Mitch likes a big, all-controlling federal government. So what you folks in Kentucky should do is form massive coalitions to target not Mitch McConnell, but your state lawmakers. You must give them a choice. Do they value Mitch McConnell's money or do they value your votes? You must make it clear to them they can't have both. You must begin to erode the base of support that Mitch and other statists like him use to attack the rights guaranteed us under the Constitution, especially Article 5. Our greatest asset is that we outnumber them. It's time we, the people, strike back against those who seek to rob us of a government of, by, and for the people by using the very document that was created to thwart their dark designs.
On last week's episode of COS Live, we gave you a quick overview of electoral victories at the state legislative level that COS Action helped achieve. Now here is a rundown of party breakdown in key state legislatures as we know them today. In North Carolina, the Senate has 30 Republicans and 20 Democrats, while the House has 70 Republicans and 48 Democrats. 2 races there are still undecided. In Ohio, the Senate has 67 Republicans to 31 Democrats, while the House has 26 Republicans to just 7 Democrats. In the Kansas Senate, there's 29 Republicans, 11 Democrats, and in the House there's 86 Republicans with just 39 Democrats. Remember that in Kansas, a 2/3 supermajority is required to pass any Article 5 legislation. The Wyoming Senate has 28 Republicans to just 2 Democrats, and in the House has 56 Republicans to just 4 Democrats. In Montana, the Senate has 31 Republicans to 19 Democrats, with the House 64 Republicans, 31 Democrats. 5 races there are still undecided. In Iowa, their Senate has 37 Republicans with just 12 Democrats, with 1 race there still undecided, and in the House, 63 Republicans, 32 Democrats, and 5 races still undecided. Remember that it's the state legislatures, not Congress, that votes on our Article 5 application, which has already been passed in 19 states, with 15 more needed to trigger an Article 5 convention to propose term limits, fiscal restraints, and limits on federal overreach. Finally, here's a look at some of the most recent photos from across the country of Convention of States volunteer patriots in action as they reach, teach, and activate Americans with a constitutional solution that's as big as the DC problem. And now you're up to date with Convention of States.
Joining us today, we have Jason Herron, who is the state director for Vermont. Jason, it's a pleasure to have you on this COS Live. Thank you for joining us. I have a lot of questions for you today. I want to get kind of your perspective on what happened in the 2022 election, because a lot of people are really frustrated about it. They feel like there's fraud. There's a lot of questions about the integrity of the election, and this kind of happens every year. But 2020 and 2022 were very. It was much more exaggerated, the suspicion of the election. But you've kind of dealt with this in your own area, in your own town. You kind of were able, and not only did you kind of deal with ballot issues, you were able to solve them. So can you share with the audience a little bit of this story about how you discovered some ballot issues within your town in Vermont, and then what you did to kind of get that resolved?
Yeah, sure. We in Vermont, they mailed out ballots to anyone on the voter checklist. So in the process, there's this role called the Justices of the Peace. That's become a fairly important role for local elections. Our town clerk had missed a deadline for that. And so the mailed-in ballots didn't have the justice of the peace candidates on them. So I've kind of created this group through COS and Constitution Alive, that we are organized now that we saw this problem. And so what happened was our town clerk, realizing this issue, decided to take it upon herself and try and resolve it. And so what she did was she created her own ballot, which was not legal, and she mailed it to just certain people in town, just people that she thought would want to be on the ballot. When we found out about this, we instantly said, well, look, we have to do something about it. This is, the first off, the ballot's illegal. And so we got together. We meet regularly on a Thursday night, but we got together on a Monday afternoon to talk about this. And what we decided was that if it was going to be fixed, we had to do it. There was no other organization or group that was going to resolve this problem. So we did. We sat down and we talked about the laws, what a ballot should look like, what markings it needs. It needed write-in candidates. To kind of go backwards, we had appointed 2 people to the Board of Civil Authority in Guilford. We learned about a law and we weren't represented there, so we appointed 2 people. These 2 people in our group, actually, after we had our meeting, we created a ballot. We came up with how much it was going to cost, the time frame it needed to go out with. We did everything. We showed the statutes. We had those 2 people that we appointed to the Board of Civil Authority call a special meeting. They presented everything that we put together, including the ballot, the instructions that we put together. We gave them a list of how much money it was going to cost, and they unanimously agreed to resend the ballot with everything that we put in. So we were able to basically solve the problem because we were an organized group that got together essentially because of the Convention of States project. And that's just one of the examples, but that was kind of a big one. And when you're talking about voter integrity and election integrity in Vermont, it's tough. Everything's being mailed. It's all being put through Dominion voting machines. There's not a whole lot of faith in the whole process in Vermont, but it's good to see that there are people active and seeing issues and then resolving them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely understand what you're saying about how it's tough. There's a lot of mail-in voting in Vermont. And there's many other states that have mail-in voting. Then, of course, there's the voting machines, and then it's hard to trust those things. But really, your story, what that says to me, that's self-governance right there in action. And that's identifying a problem and then rallying and organizing people to resolve that problem. It's just an outstanding story. I want to go back to something that you said, though, because you talked about Constitution Alive, and many of our viewers might not know exactly what Constitution Alive is. As you know, Rick Green and Patriot Academy has partnered with Convention of States Action, and we kind of promote Constitution Alive. We are an organization that is using Article 5 of the Constitution, so it just kind of makes sense that we promote Constitution Alive and constitutional education. Can you just share a little bit about what Constitution Alive is, kind of Patriot Academy, and then how that was able, or how you were able to use that to kind of organize these people with these ballot issues?
Yeah, I'd love to. That's such a huge part of this group being established to begin with. When I first signed the petition to be, to support Convention of States and check the box to volunteer, I did probably like what a lot of people do, and you just kind of go out and you send emails just thinking, boy, if you could just convince people that just to sign on to this, it's going to solve the problem. What I recognized right away was that I had no influence. The servant leadership class that I took through Convention of States is really what made me recognize that you need influence. If people don't think you have influence, then you don't have any. I had learned about David Barton through the Convention of States, and by the way, that man's changed my life. That's for another story, but through David Barton, Convention of States led me to Patriot Academy and the Constitution Alive course. I have, I own a farm, I wear earbuds a lot, and I was listening to these Constitution Alive courses constantly, and I can't tell you how many times I stopped during the middle of my day and was like, I can't believe I didn't know this. So that kind of got my wheels spinning. Well, maybe other people would be interested in this, but I was hesitant, just I think like everyone. I'm just learning about the Constitution. I don't really know I'm certainly not a teacher of it. So I went on Patriot Academy and I looked, and it turns out you don't have to be very bright to do this. You just have to hit play. They have workbooks. It's all very simple. So I went to a Republican committee meeting, and I am not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm just an American. I hate the political divisiveness in this country, but I went to the Republican committee meeting and basically said I was so disgruntled with the way our government was running, but I'd like to share some of the Constitution, and I know about this course, and I couldn't believe it. But the whole place, there was like 7 people in there. They're absolutely, when do you want to do it? And so that just started. We started watching those courses, and we did the 10-week course, and we were meeting once a week. And after those sessions, you wouldn't believe the conversations that come out of it. And all of a sudden you're, well, what can we do right here? What can we do in our town? And it turns out there's plenty to do in our town. Our town's kind of a microcosm of what's going on in the country. So that Constitution Alive class, it did so much. First off, it just educates you on some of the very basic fundamental principles of the Constitution and why we should be supporting it. But then it brought this group of people together that have this kind of like-mindedness after the fact, and it rallied. So we meet now once a week, and it has nothing to do with Constitution Alive. It's about trying to hold our local government representatives accountable. So that Constitution Alive, I cannot emphasize that enough. If you're looking a way to get your feet in the door with some influence and make an impact, and it's such a fun thing to do, it has been the reason that I think that this group has been successful now, and why we're growing in Vermont.
And I love how you talked about that. You talked about how starting small with Constitution Alive really led to, big involvement and the ability to organize and lead and get people in your area to be kind of watchdogs almost in a way, and to actually practice self-governance, which is just such an amazing story. So I love hearing that. Tell us about your involvement in this past election. It's my understanding that you were, as an individual, supporting COS-friendly candidates. What advice would you have for others out there who are, in your area, who are or who are in other states, if they would like to participate in elections as well to help get COS-friendly candidates elected?
I mean, Vermont's tough. There's no doubt about it. Reason is kind of out the window in Vermont. To give me an example, there are people, if they hear the word Republican or conservative, that they get a feeling of hatred, and there's no amount of reason that can overcome them when it comes to that. So I believe that you're fighting a losing battle in Vermont just by putting yourself out there as a Republican candidate, and that's, I think, what's going on in Vermont, and why it's so difficult to make any headway is that they're facing their emotions. They're not actually arguing or rationalizing with reason. So with our election process in Vermont, it was very, very disappointing. We put in a lot of work. There's a friend of mine who we convinced to run, and she is a great candidate, loves the Constitution, supporter of COS. And all we did was expose her candidate's voting record, and it's atrocious, what she's voted for. And we thought that was going to be enough, but it didn't make a difference. So that was very frustrating to see that, though not surprising. So I don't think anyone was, I guess disappointed is a word for it, but not going to stop because of the results of this. We just know that the battle we're in is that much more difficult. But if I were to say anything, it's working the process of COS. It starts off where you think it's about signatures, but it's not. It's as a district captain, it's about getting that group organized and holding your local government accountable. So once you start doing that, and you start advertising that, hey, this is the Constitution, and it's just full of fundamental principles. There's nothing archaic about it. I think that's how you win these people over, and that's where we're moving with it, Vermont right now. Is we have to get away from the political parties. This is about a way of government. If you want if you want a top-down government where the federal government tells the states what to do and the states tell the municipalities what to do, and the municipalities tell what the individuals should do, well, then you should try and live in Vermont, because that's what they're trying to do. If you want it to be the other way around, where the people are in charge, and that's what, but we have to explain that. I mean, most people in Vermont, and I think in the country in general, think that the federal government's in charge. So getting people to understand how an Article 5 convention works is certainly the way you change that dynamic. If people understand that the states are in charge and the people are in charge, boy, just getting that information out there is enough to realize that, whoa, what we've got going on in Vermont is not freedom and liberty. It's the exact opposite. So I'd say just keep focusing on what Convention of States, the whole plan is. You just follow their plan, fill roles, follow the plan, and I think it's all going to work out just like it's supposed to.
Yeah, and I love the advice about political parties, about that. Convention of States is a nonpartisan organization. We aren't Republican. We're not Democrat. One of my favorite lines from Representative Bill Taylor in South Carolina is he says, "This isn't a red movement, a blue movement. It's a red, white, and blue movement." And it's a great way to kind of cut through the political divide, because, as you said, there's a lot of emotion when it comes to your political party. But if you stick to the principles, if you stick to the mission and what Convention of States wants to do, because one of the things we say is we are the solution as big as the problem. So, and that's not because of a party affiliation. That's because we have Article 5 of the Constitution. We have the founders kind of supporting us. So that's one perspective. I want to switch over to kind of talking about the Vermont team, though, just for a moment, because you mentioned that it's not easy in Vermont, that it's really difficult in your state because of sometimes there's that political affiliation that comes into play. But can you just give us an update on what's going on with the Vermont team and what's going to be coming next as we move from 2022 and we go into 2023 and the new legislative session? Kind of what's going to be happening for the Vermont team?
It's really exciting. I'm so excited to answer this question. So we last year, when I first became the state director, we went to a state fair, and there was probably 7 total volunteers, really a group of 4 that stayed there and worked the fair for the day. And we picked up over 275 petition signers in Vermont. Now, that may not sound like a lot, but Vermont had less than 4,000 signatures since 2016. It hasn't been a play for in Vermont at all. So we basically picked up about 8% of the total votes in a 4-day period, just from working one fair with very little support. So that was one real positive thing that we're seeing, that, wow, we really can have an impact here if we just focus some of our energy on some of those things like that, the state fairs and whatnot. So that was kind of where we're going with that. Something happened with a representative. Her name is Vicki Strong. She is a Gold Star mother and just a wonderful person. She is from Northern Vermont, and she was a state representative in the House of Representatives in Vermont for the last 12 years. Last year, her district was redrawn, and she was put in a district that was not friendly to her. Now, Vicki is a supporter of COS. She actually went to the first simulated convention in 2015. She's always been a supporter in our legislature. So when she lost that race, that was a tough pill to swallow. And you could almost look at that, boy, that's really defeating. But that's not how I looked at it. I gave her like a week to kind of lick her wounds, and I reached out to her, and she has just enthusiastically agreed to be our new legislative liaison for Vermont. She has so much influence still in our Congress. Like I said, this woman the role was fit for her. I'd like to announce a couple other ones, but I can't do it quite yet because so what's happened is some people that lost their races are recognizing that just electing people isn't going to be the solution. So they're buying in, and people that were doing things kind of on their own are now saying, look, I want to be a part of the COS movement. So we're working on our leadership team. We've filled one big role with Vicki. I've got another one. We're filling it, but we can't say anything yet about it just because they haven't actually officially agreed to it. And we're having another meeting on December 6th with some pretty influential people in Vermont that have shown a lot of interest in COS, and we're trying to unite them so we can get focused and we can get on offense, because that's what's going on in Vermont. We are constantly deflecting. We are a baseball team that never gets up to bat, and boy, you get this group of people involved behind COS, and you see that momentum, and then you can contact our supporters, and that grows, and then we're going to target individual people on the committee that has our resolution on the wall. We've got a lot of plans going on, and then all the fairs this summer that we're going to hit them all. We're not just going to hit one in Rutland. We're going to hit them all, as many as we can. And so we've got a lot of plans coming up for this spring, summer, and fall with COS. And right now we're trying to fill in some of the leadership roles, and we filled a big one with Vicky Strong. So I'm really excited to announce that here, actually.
That is so great. Some of the momentum that you have, the ability to generate just a large number of petitions, then looking ahead at all the fairs that you're going to target in 2023 during the summer. It's just exciting to hear how the team is really unifying, coming together, and how you guys are going to be it seems like you're going to be a well-oiled machine. And that's just really encouraging and inspiring to hear how that's happening in Vermont. I got one last question, Jason, before we let you go. I just want to get to know I want the audience to know a little bit about you. Can you just share what your COS story is? Kind of tell us how you got involved with the organization and how you've then come all this way to now be the state director for Vermont. And lastly, also, just what drives you every day to work at this?
So getting involved with COS, I had been a big fan of term limits for a while, and now I'm involved with COS. I realize that's more of a symptom rather than the disease. But I was so disgruntled about it. I wasn't signing any more petitions until Ben Shapiro. I have been listening to him, and I had heard Mark Meckler before, and then Ben supported it. So I really looked into it, and once I realized that this was legit, that I was all in. So from there, it was just a matter of how much information I could absorb and what time I could do it in. And I own a farm. It's a maple farm. We do firewood and lumber. I'm constantly wearing buds. I used to just listen to music. Instead, I started listening to people like David Barton and Michael Ferris, and the list goes on and on. So that's what really kind of drove me. The COVID thing was really kind of one of the things that got me questioning it. When the governor of Vermont was saying that you couldn't travel, you couldn't perform your work, I said, well, that's unconstitutional, out loud. And I was like, well, what do you know about the Constitution? I don't know anything. Instinct was like, that's unconstitutional. But so then it just kind of segued from there, where I got to this point where there was okay, I'm a district captain. I feel like I'm being successful with organizing my district and getting them organized. Well, we need a state director. So I just filled the role. I'm not even sure I'm a good state director. I just know someone needs to fill the role, and I just believe wholeheartedly in this organization as it is the only way we are going to save our country without shedding blood. And I forget what the second part of that question was, because I really wanted to answer it, but that's basically how I got started with COS was through Ben Shapiro, and just recognizing that it was a legitimate thing.
Hearing that is all the proof I need, by the way, to know that you're an excellent state director. But the second part of the question was what drives you each day? What gets you up in the morning? What motivates you? What keeps you working at this so diligently, organizing, unifying the team, going out there and working? What is it? What's the secret sauce that you have?
I tell you, for me, it was very difficult until I took the servant leadership class. That really put things into perspective for me, not only understanding how the organization COS operates and how it functions, but that, John Quincy Adams says, this is what I always go to. John Quincy Adams says, the duty is ours, the results are God's. And I know everyone's kind of got their version of that, but I just totally believe in that it's just my duty to do the right thing and to just try and fight this, because not fighting it is as bad as being on the other side. So I just keep going back to that. The duty is ours, the results are God's, and we're just going to fight. And I'm so happy to have an organization like the Convention of States Project that has my back and has the structure ready to fight and actually win. I guess that's what it is. It always goes back to Michael's and Mark Meckler's dream, Michael Ferris and Mark Meckler's dream of this, and just working the plan. So just do the right thing because it's the thing to do, and you don't worry about the results. They'll work themselves out.
That is outstanding. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it's just, you're very inspiring, Jason. Just talking about duty and God providing the results and just to continue working diligently. We want to have you back on.
Anytime.
You're always welcome to join us. Thank you for coming on today. And I'm rooting for you. The audience is rooting for you. Your entire COS family is rooting for you and the Vermont team. All right, Jason, we'll talk to you another time, okay?
Thanks, Adrian. See ya.
All right. Now we're going to go over to Mike Ruthenberg, who has our answer for the Article 5 trivia giveaway. Mike, over to you.
Thank you, Andrew. What a great show. It's always great to know how you can do what you need to do. Also, when you're not voting. I mean, voting only happens, every 2 years, every 4 years, sometimes more often if there's some local races, but there's so much more we can do. I'm so glad that you guys took the time to share some of the great things that we can do. And if you hearken back to the very beginning of the show, we gave a little Article 5 trivia. You heard that I'm giving away this hat, this Second Amendment hat. This is a hat that celebrates the Second Amendment, that we certainly support the Second Amendment to the Constitution. However, there is one amendment that was repealed, and that's our trivia question for today. Next Monday will mark the anniversary of which amendment to the Constitution? And again, it talks about repealing the 18th Amendment. That was our hint. And the answer, you probably all know by now. I remember by 18 and 21. And that repeals the prohibition of alcohol. The 18th Amendment was a prohibition on alcohol. The 21st is really interesting because it's the only time in American history that a constitutional amendment has repealed a previous amendment. This is important because we understand that not only can amendments be a little bit off or need adjusting or need to be completely repealed, but there's also other interpretations of the Constitution that need to happen, that need to be added to the Constitution so we can clarify what's happening, especially in current times. Some things have changed, and it's really important that we be able to change that, which is exactly why Convention of States exists. It's exactly why we've gotten through 19 states already. We're going to get to convention, and we can come up with some great constitutional amendments to keep this nation as great as it is, and to know that a nation built on God's principles, on the virtue of men serving their nation, citizen legislators, we're going to return it right back. Thanks so much for being here, and we will see you next time. Back to you, Andrew.
Thanks, Mike. Well, time for us to sign off. It's been a jam-packed episode. We do this broadcast. We do it every single week because we want to reach, teach, and activate Americans and empower them with the constitutional tools that were given to us by the founding fathers to check an out-of-control federal government. If you're ready to come alongside many brave Americans who have decided to stand up against the federal government, against their encroachments, to use this constitutional power that was gifted to you, then I want you to go to conventionofstates.com. Take the click action page. You'll find all kinds of different roles that you can sign up to be a part of. We'll take any talent you have and we will apply it towards Convention of States and calling the very first Article 5 convention to amend the U.S. Constitution. We want to limit the size, scope, and jurisdiction of the federal government. We want to get amendments that would see fiscal responsibility, federal government that is within its limits, and also we want to rein in that out of control federal government. And of course, we want to see term limits too. So don't forget to follow us on Rumble, MeWe, Twitter, Facebook, Parler, Truth Social, Instagram, wherever you're getting your social media buzz. Make sure that you're following us, like and share the content. You can also listen to this program on our Convention of States podcast. Just search Convention of States wherever you podcast from. You can find us on Podbean, Amazon Music, and Audible. If you want to get important COS messages and updates, please text START to 54555. Again, that's START to 54555. Check out the Battle Cry with COS President and co-founder Mark Meckler. It's on every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll see you next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time for another edition of COS Live. We have the country to save, so it's time for us to get back to work. Thank you for watching.